After everything that was said and done and that we learned about the hashkafa part of it, here comes the part which is not the hashkafa part, but halach l'maisa. Action. There's a question that teachers ask. Do I have to teach the child all of the Aleph Beis from Aleph till Taf before I start teaching the Kudais? What's the answer? Here the Rebbe answers. It's printed in Shara Eloch Minag. It's written as follows. B'devar hashaylo ha'ikroinis. Regarding to your very important question, that was aroused, that was brought up. Do we have to learn all the Isis in order till the end, till Saf? And only afterwards to start teaching them the Kudais. Or the other option, or is it okay once they learned one letter or a few letters, can you already introduce the nekudais and use it for these letters? Hamainahu, the answer is Hasher, Achrei Shalomdu Misper Oisius, after the children have learned several letters, Efsher Lilmaid Anikud La'oisius Elu. They're already able to learn nekudais for these letters. Not only that, you can already blend together. Abba, Boga, you could put even combinations of letters together. So the answer is yes. You don't have to finish till Taf. You can start a few letters and then nekudais. Here's another place where the Rebbe says the same thing, but the Rebbe adds one more line. Let's see. What if a person already learned the Isis and some nekudais, but they didn't learn all the nekudais yet? They learned, let's say, kamatz and patach, with some letters or all the letters, and they didn't do tzeda segel. Is that okay? Do I have to first finish teaching them all the names of the nekudais before I start using it with letters? Says the Rebbe, hine ein kepeda b'zeh. It's not something that you have to stand on. It's not important. You don't have to finish all the nekudais first. Although at first glance the Rebbe says, it might be easier. There is some merit of teaching them all the nekudas in one long continuation. That means to learn from kamatz until the last nekuda. Rather than stopping after patach or tzeda and get involved with other ways, bring other letters with the previous nekudas. There might be some merit to that, but says the Rebbe, it's your option, you can choose. And therefore the Rebbe concludes, this is a question which you will call an educational question, a pedagogical question, and the way to answer this question has to be befitting the children that are in your class. Some classes could be one way, and some classes could be another way. Fitting the students in your class. And the way they grasp the lessons. So that's up to you to decide. 1968, a group of people came to the Rebbe in Yechidus from Beis Yaakov of Borough Park. So it was 1968. And they asked the Rebbe many questions about chinuch. This school now is a big school. It's on 14th Avenue and 46th Street. My father was assistant principal with Rabbi Ehrenreich there for like 30 years. But this was before my father got there. So they asked the Rebbe some questions, and they wrote down the answers afterwards, and it was printed in Sefer HaSichos, Tafshin Chaf Ches, page 506. And this is what it says there. It's not Muga, wasn't edited by the Rebbe, so we'll just read it and see what it says. The Lamed is Aleph Beis V'Hanukudes Lifnei Limud HaAvaris. To teach the Aleph Beis and the Nukudas before teaching the Havaris complete syllables. I can't say I understand what it means, but because it's mentioned, I thought I'll mention it. Belima the Havaris ein kapeda im ein heilchem lefi aseder shel Aleph Beis. Once you're teaching syllables, you don't have to go in a specific order of the Aleph Beis. Again, it doesn't have too much elaboration of what it means. Everyone could try to understand what they want from it. Now, we know there are many letters, there are many books that have interesting pictures with the Aleph Beis. They take the Aleph and turn it into a water carrier, like the Rebbe said. The Rebbe talked about it, that what's an Aleph? It's like a water carrier. You have the stick in the middle that the water carrier has, and he has one pail on one side of the stick and one pail on the other. So you could show the child a water carrier and say, it looks like an Aleph. But, says the Rebbe, if you want to convert letters of the Aleph Beis into different pictures and different shapes, is that okay? So says the Rebbe, it is okay after they got accustomed to the very original, natural shape of the ICS. In other words, the child should first see the Aleph in its natural way, the way it's in the siddur, with no shapes and no trimmings, just the pure Aleph. And then you could do whatever you want. Why? So the Rebbe explains, Tvius ayin harishayna shel hayelad, b'limud Aleph Beis, training the eye of the child to pick up and decipher the shapes of the Aleph Beis, tzrich aliyos b'tzuru ha'amitis shel ha'oisius. They must be shown the letters in the true form of that letter. V'loi b'tziyurim me'einzeh. Not with different kind of shapes and decorations and designs. What's the problem? Says the Rebbe, because the kid will always have that stuck in his mind for his whole life. You show him an apple tree and you say, this is like a vav, whatever. He'll see a vav, he'll always thinking that the apple tree, that's the real shape of a vav, which is not true. The real shape of a vav is its natural shape, the way you see in a siddur, or in a chumash, or in the Sefer Torah. It is possible that in his imagination, if you show him, you start off with a funny shape, Yisrashem, he'll get impressed, Ki'ilu atmuna hazois, hi be'emes tzuras ha'is. As if this picture, this design, is the true design of this letter. So the answer is, don't start off that way. What later? The Rebbe doesn't say later it's okay, but it might be self-understood. What's about colors? Is it okay to show the children Aleph Beis in color? Does it have to be black and white, like a Sefer Torah? So the Rebbe says, well, do whatever is more interesting for the child. Yasu kefi shemoyel yoser b'negeya v'isanyinus hatalmidim sheyichyu. Do whatever seems to be more beneficial for the interest of the children. And the Rebbe brings a proof. Shari b'mei habinayim, in the Middle Ages, nidfesu kama sfarim, several sfarim were printed. Mehem, amongst them was Reish Ches, maybe means Reish Chachma, I'm not sure. Shekol Gilyon Haya B'Tzeva Acher. Each Gilyon, not just a sheet, not each page, but books are put together in folded pages. So each Gilyon was in a different color, liyofi, for niceness. So the Rebbe says, if it's more interesting, you can do it. What's about the Seder Limud Hanakudais, Hamuktam v'Hamauchar? Do I have to go according to the Seder of Aleph before Beis, and Beis before Gimel, or before Beis before Gimel? How about Kamatz and Patach? Can I do Patach before Kametz? So what's the Seder Limud Hanakudais? The Seder Limud Hanakudais Hamuktam v'Hamauchar. When you're teaching the Kudais, you have to go with the Seder the way it's printed. Tzarech liyos oisei shanog etzleinu mikvar. It must be done the way we're accustomed of doing it already for a long time. Beluach ha'Aleph Beis. In the Aleph Beis chart, hamutfas lechud, which happens to be a separate chart, which is printed separately. V'gam ba'asidurim u'b'sifrei halimud. It's printed in Sidurim and other books of learning. So in other words, you have to follow the Seder the way it's in the Siddur or on the chart. Why? What's wrong if I teach them Patach before it's Kamatz? So the Rebbe says like this. First of all, the order is not stam in order. It's not a random order. It was figured out with Kedusha, with a lot of Kedusha in mind. Shalavad Zois. Besides the fact, Mashiyesh L'Seder Zeh, Mishum Taimim, that this order that you see in the Siddur have reasons. Sheyisudasam, Yisudasam B'Hadei Kodesh, that their source is in the holy mountains. What does that mean, holy mountains? It comes from Kedusha, from great sources, from previous generations, through the tzaddikim. Besides that, hinegams toiv shaloi yiyeh bilbul b'seder alimud hazeh. That it's also good to avoid any confusion. Why? B'mleimdim chelik ha'alef Beis l'fa'amim eitzel arayim. One day they're going to learn the Aleph Beis by their father and mother with one seder. And then, or they're going to go to different teachers. If you're not going to keep the same order, the kid will get confused. This teacher starts from Patach, this one starts from Tzeda, and my Rebbe starts from Kamatz. The Rebbe says it's going to just confuse them. In other words, besides the fact that it has a holy reason, it's also not practical. In this detail, it's important. She has chilu b'kamatz v'loy b'patach. They should start specifically with the kamatz and not start with patach. Why? Mekevan sheregilim kvar mehabayis l'shmaya she has chilu lilmeid kamatz alafa. When a kid comes home and he hears in the house they're saying, hey, we started learning Kamatz Halafa. Oh, you didn't start learning Patach Halafa? In other words, he knows already that the first thing is going to be kamatz. So why Dre is cup? Why confuse him if you could give it to him easier? So the Nakuda is the point here to follow the Seder of the Aleph Beis and the Nakudas, the way it's in the Siddur. At what age can I start teaching my child to read Aleph Beis? So the Rebbe says there's no limit. You can start from the youngest age. But Yeshnam Nizharim Melimod Lifnei Gimel Shanim. There are those who are very careful not to teach the child Aleph Beis before they turn 3. There are those. And what do they base it on? Valpi Mashakasuv. There's a pasuk when it talks about planting a new tree. It says the first 3 years, it should be the fruits you don't eat. It's called arla. You're not allowed to eat from the fruits of a tree for the first few years. So it says, Shalish shanim areilim yulachem. The first 3 years, you're not going to eat it. So that's why the first 3 years of a child, you don't teach them yet the reading of Aleph Beis. That's what they base it on. But, says the Rebbe, amongst Chassidim, I never saw people being careful about this. I never saw people refraining from teaching their children even before the age of 3. I have not seen amongst the Chassidim they should be careful about this. If anyone wants to, specifically, he does want to be careful, so the Rebbe says, you know what? How about making a distinction? You'll teach them until 3 by heart, and after 3, you show them in the page, in the book. L'chol hayoser, at most, that means someone who wants to be more stringent and more careful, yishlchalek, we can distinguish between limud ba'al peh le limud b'ksav. Whether you're teaching ba'al peh, by heart, or teaching in the book. That by heart you could do even before he's 3, and ba'al peh and b'ksav in writing in the book you'll do when he's 3. But it doesn't seem like the Rebbe is very pro for this. He said, if you want to be careful, you can be careful that way. So in other words, the Rebbe doesn't seem like the Rebbe is accepting at all the first opinion, not to learn at all with the kid before 3. Okay, next. Here's an interesting few lines from Sefer Zechreinos. I don't remember why it was put over here. It could have been earlier. Mesaperes Rachel. Rachel, the Babi, the grandmother of Shal Adma Azakin, of the Reb Shneur Zalman Dal Rebbe, says the following: Kishayisi bas arba, when I turned 4, now I remember why. Yeah, va'achi pachais mi ben shalish. My brother was younger than 3 years old. Hine anoichi lemadativ es habrachais. I taught him the brachas before 3. V'gam harisi loi. I also showed him Kriah oisias Aleph Beis iman akudais comments Aleph b'chein kulam. And I showed him the reading of Aleph Beis with the nekudas comments Aleph and the rest. So I guess this comes in sequence from the previous one, the Haidah about whether before 3 it's okay, the Maisa, the Pile from Rachel.